Hey guys, it's Estonian17 here with Colt Gaming and Test Drive 3. We're doing an NFC West preview, and first off we're going to start with the St. Louis Rams, brought to you by Trey himself. Take it away.
Alright guys, so now we're going to talk about the Rams, who had a record of 6-10 last year and finished 4th in the NFC West. Key additions include quarterback Nick Foles, outside linebacker Akeem Ayers, defensive tackle Nick Fairley. Top 3 draft picks are Todd Gurley, running back, Georgia, offensive tackle Rob Havenstein, and offensive tackle Jamion Brown. Also, I added in quarterback Sean Marion just as an additional draft pick, just because he can have some impact if he does hit the field. Key losses include Sam Bradford, quarterback Sean Hill, running back Zach Stacy, offensive tackle Jake Long, offensive tackle Joe Barksdale, defensive tackle Kendall Langford. Now on offense, Foles never really got a chance at all because he was really sidelined for most of the year, and so as the Rams offense did, they never had a chance with Sam Bradford given his injury-prone status. So it'll be nice to see how Nick Foles rebounds, and if he can be healthy, they can probably do at least really good. Just as in him being a game manager, that's all he really needs to be. Last season he completed 59.8% of his passes. Now with the drafting of Todd Gurley, the 10th pick in the draft, considered to be the best prospect since Adrian Peterson, but he torn his ACL, which caused him to fall a little bit in the draft, because he could have been a potential #1 pick had he had said like a great season, but that didn't happen because of the season-ending injury. So while you have Todd Gurley in or sidelines with the ACL injury, you can have Trey Mason in the backfield. Last year he did well with 765 yards, so he's pretty solid as far as what you're going to get out of him. You probably won't get a 1,000-yard rusher if Todd Gurley can't return this season, but hopefully he will at least mid-season, and then you'll probably have a good run game. If Nick Foles can be good and have a nice run game to add to it, the offense should be okay. Now you have the offensive line. Jake Long and Joseph Barksdale are both gone. This is used like a huge gap in both left tackle and right tackle, so they're gonna have to figure out some things to do. They did draft Greg Robinson last year's draft with the 2nd overall pick, and now this year 2nd round pick Rob Havenstein was selected as well. So they're probably gonna have to look to step up in the season. Greg Robinson had a pretty poor season, but hopefully he can rebound and be an anchor on that offensive line, excuse me, I'm sorry. Left guard Roger Stafford is probably the best blocker, but he was lost due to injury. So it's kind of bad that they had so many injury-prone offensive linemen. I think that's what really brought them down last year on offense, was just the tremendous amount of injuries. So the only other offensive linemen that are projected to start are Tim Browns and Andrew Donald. Both have only played 4 games, and none of them were really good at all. Donald was a 4th round pick, so you're not really sure what you're going to get out of him. While left guard Roger Stafford only allowed 2.5 sacks and only had 2 false start penalties and had no holding penalties at all. Now for the wideouts, Brian Quick was doing really good up until week 3, where he got injured. He had 25 receptions with 375 yards and 3 touchdowns, but he missed the rest of the season. So they're gonna look to go to Kenny Britt, who sometimes is like, he's kind of involved with injuries, or he just has lack of motivation. Although they did sign him back in the offseason, so we'll see where that goes. And slot receiver slated is Stedman Bailey, who was a pretty good slot option. I mean, about as good as you're gonna get with 30 receptions for you. 435 yards, which is not bad, but when you think about the quarterbacks that they had, you can't really do much there. Also, Tavon Austin is also going to be back. The new offensive coordinator plans to use him a little more than just a returner, so we'll see how that goes. He's been really a bust up until now, so it's just going to be interesting to see exactly what he can do. Now on defense, Aaron Donald was probably the breakout star on the Rams. He was just a part-time player, but then after a while, in the Pittsburgh game, he put him in. Jake Fisher put him in, and he completely clogged up lanes. He completely just destroyed the offensive line, and that's when Jake Fisher knew that he had such a stud on his team. That was week 6, and he's definitely one of the best young defensive tackles, if not the best young defensive tackle. The reigning defensive player of the year as well. And he had 9 sacks since his start. It's pretty amazing. And then on the other side of him, we have Robert Quinn, a 2-time Pro Bowler, who had 10.5 sacks last year, along with Chris Long, who didn't play too well just because he played on a broken leg a lot of the season. So we're gonna see how he can rebound, and if he's gonna get back to his usual game-wrecking stuff. He was pretty good up until then. And then on the other side of him, other side of Aaron Donaldson, we have Michael Brockers. He hasn't quite been the exact pass rusher that they have wanted, but he has stopped the run game. So it's kind of like a give or take situation. You did draft somebody for a certain thing, but then you do the opposite thing. It all works out though. But they did get Nick Fairley from the Lions, who they could switch him on passing downs. But take note, Nick Fairley only had 1 sack last year in 8 games, which is not that good. Maybe it was just injuries, or could be a lot of flurry of other things. Not exactly sure. And then middle linebacker John Laurinaitis hasn't played as many people have projected him to be, but he did have 109 tackles last year in 2014. They're gonna get some help on the linebacker side with Hakeem Ayers. They gotta pick them up from New England Patriots at free agency, so he should be a good pass rushing option along with a few other things. Cornerback Janoris Jenkins didn't play quite like he should have, but last year. But he has a ton of upside, along with, on the other side of him, EJ Gaines. He impressed gratefully his rookie year, even though he was a 6th-round pick, and he's tied for 16th in yards per cover snap, and a QB rating of 7.9 when they were throwing to him. Along with the other secondary, the safeties, TJ McDonald and Ronnie McClevin round out that core. Excuse me. So TJ McDonald did have an 84 tackle season, so we're gonna see how well that does. And McKelvin will be pretty solid if he can just make sure that he doesn't allow any big plays. My X factor on offense is Nick Foles. If Nick Foles can just be a game manager and get the ball to certain receivers and certain backs and just manage the game well, not throw interceptions, this team should be okay. On defense, I picked X factor Janoris Jenkins. If he can get back to the solid and physical play that he was, him and EJ Gaines should probably be one of the best cornerback duos in the league. My ceiling for this team, I have decided, is 8 wins, and my floor is 6. What do you guys have to say?
Well, first thing I'd like to say, the Rams have made some strides in the offseason, especially signing Nick Fairley, who's a run-stopping, minded player. Of course, you've seen the 1 sack that you were talking about, okay, but he is a major run stuffer. There was a reason he was the 2nd overall pick out of Auburn that year. And so I just think if they can have Nick Foles be who he was with the Eagles, I mean, you saw that 27-2 touchdown year, where that was very impressive. No one saw that coming out of him, and I just thought it was a pretty overall great season he put together, but injuries like the collarbone issue derailed his season, so he hasn't been given too much of a chance, like you said earlier. Sheldon, what do you think on the topic?
I think the St. Louis Rams had a very, very good offseason, minus the first round of the draft. I thought they had bigger needs than running back, and they could have given Trey Mason another year or so to develop and see if they need to move on.
Because they still had Zach Stacy as well.
Correct.
So
And receiver
they could have remained where they were, and they could have taken a bigger named wideout like Amari Cooper. Well, actually, Amari Cooper was gone at that point.
Devontae Parker would have been a good slot there.
Yeah, they could have taken Parker. They could have given Nick Foles some help. They could have gotten a lot better.
I still think they should have went offensive line as well because, well, like I said,
losing Jake
Long,
yeah,
and
exactly.
Barksdale was a big blow to the offensive line. So I mean, like, what do you guys think is floor and ceiling?
I would say the floor for this team would be about 5 wins, depending on how their running backs play. Because if Nick Foles has no running game after the offensive line has departed and like left a pretty big gap on the edge, Nick Foles might have to try and be in everything for them, and I don't see that ending up well. So that would be my floor, and my ceiling would be about 8 wins.
Now for me, I see if they have injury problems early on, I really think that they could be a 4-win team. That's a kind of a bare minimum. But since they're in a tough division, especially with the Cardinals and the Seahawks, I can also see them getting to 8 wins as well. But it all rides on Nick Foles' shoulders. I mean, it's really how can he adjust to the Jeff Fisher system. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out in St. Louis.
Wideouts have to step out as well to me. They weren't doing too well.
Very true, and Fisher's on the hot seat, I may add, going into this season.
I think that
So
we'll see how it goes because they're giving him a defense that should hold up well if everybody stays healthy. We'll see.
Right. So thank you, Trey.
Run defense.
So thank you, Trey, for giving us your insight on the St. Louis Rams. Next will be presented by myself, the San Francisco 49ers. What a crazy offseason it has been. Let's get to it. 8-8 last year, way below expectations. They were thought to be an 11-win team. Now let's talk about their key losses. Patrick Willis, Chris Borland, Stevie Johnson, Frank Gore, Michael Crabtree, and Chris Culver. Ouch. I mean, you had the foundation of your defense gone in Willis and Chris Borland, both to retirement. Now that's going to be huge for them. If they have to replace that now. They have Navarro Bowman yet, okay, but there's going to have to be some other guys from the bench that have stepped up because they didn't go out of their way in the draft to take one, so they obviously trust who they have behind them. Key additions: Torrey Smith, Reggie Bush, Darnell Dockett, and Philip Wheeler. Torrey Smith, big play guy. We'll get to him later on. And Reggie Bush is a dynamic running back to see how much does he really have left in the tank. I mean, that'll be, you want to see if he can be that down the field guy and let Kaepernick unleash his arm. He's not very accurate, but he still has kind of an arm because he actually did play college baseball. In the first round, Eric Armstead out of Oregon was selected. Kind of the knock on him is he's very raw. He doesn't have many moves, but it's his size and his length of arms that gives him the leverage on the other player. So if he can figure out a swim move or something like that, that'd be, a big pickup for them in the middle of the draft. Second round, Jaquiski Tart. He's a small school guy and can come in on nickel packages if needed, because they don't have that bad of a safety tandem. They have Eric Reed back there, but they also need to pair him. Tart is going to be the perfect fit for them, and I thought he slid in the draft. He could easily have been at the end of the first round, but he slid out of that. He can also get in the box for run-stopping purposes and is known as an aggressive tackler. Third round is Eli Harold, outside linebacker from Virginia, who's very explosive off the edge and has very strong upper half to his body. He can blitz the B gap and is slippery around the trenches. And then we look at the fourth round pick, Mike Davis, running back, South Carolina, who can be very injury prone. They saw that throughout his collegiate career. He's not known for his speed though. He only runs a 4.6 at the combine, but I mean, some of the big things what the Niners saw from him was the vision and the in-between tackles running. And we're going to take a look at the coaching staff and how that's changed during the offseason. Big thing for them, losing Jim Harbaugh to the University of Michigan. Who saw that coming? Jim Harbaugh, who had led his team to 2 consecutive NFC championship games, stood down and he's like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to go back to the University of Michigan where he played. And the replacement is Jim Tomzula, who is a former defensive line coach. And they liked him for his toughness and the respect he had in the locker room. The top storylines for the Niners during the offseason is, will Carlos Hyde become the lead back? And he has a Frank Gore mentality and a style of running, but can he step into the lead role? And another thing is, who's going to replace the middle linebackers of Willis and Borland? Will it be Philip Wheeler or Michael Wilhoit, who had 87 tackles last year and shows promise to help, replace them? I mean, they have 2 Pro Bowl caliber middle linebackers they have to replace. And here you can see a 5-yard run. Okay, key players to watch: Torrey Smith, Colin Kaepernick, Navarro Bowman, Eric Reed, and Vernon Davis. Torrey Smith, the reason he's a key player is if they can get the pass going, it will open up things for Carlos Hyde up the middle, because Kaepernick did not have a very good pass game last year. I mean, he had Anquan Bolden, and Crabtree wasn't up to expectations. And the other person is Colin Kaepernick. Can he keep that offense moving fluently like he did in those championship runs, the NFC championship runs they had? Navarro Bowman, that's a big one. He's going to have to step up and be the quarterback of that defense. They are really lacking a leader, and hopefully he can step into that role and just show that he is a leader. Eric Reed, he's going to have to help that secondary out because, boy, it is not looking too good. Chris Culliver gone. One of the top corners for them is going to be Chris Cook, and back from his Minnesota days, he was not a very quick corner and got beat a lot over the top, especially even by like Alshon Jeffrey. And Vernon Davis, he needs to get off to a fast start this year, and that's if he can even make it through camp. You don't know. Vernon Davis may be a camp casualty, which would be kind of disappointing for the Niners fans, but it may be the best thing for the team. And finally, I'd like to give the ceiling and the floor for this team. At the highest, I would say they could go 9-7. That is if Eric Armstead can step in the role of Justin Smith and help anchor this defense. The floor for the team is 5-11. Many things could go wrong with this team, the biggest being the linebacker turnover. I wouldn't be surprised to see them on the bottom half of the league in rushing yards allowed. Another thing is they could struggle without having Frank Gore, who was the foundation of that offense, and he was the model of consistency. But what my actual prediction is that they'll go 7-9 after losing so many pieces on the defense. It will be tough to corral them and make the playoffs. This is a very tough division with the Cardinals, Seahawks, and Rams. They're all very good teams, so I'd like to hear what you guys have to say on the topic.
Well, I think that, you had some good points there. Nice presentation, I have to say. So, as far as my thoughts on the 49ers, everything that could have went wrong, went wrong. They lost Patrick Willis. They lost Chris Borland out of absolutely nowhere.